I was working on a construction job in Puerto Rico. It was 1967. I was 17 years old. I contracted a severe case of gastroenteritis and was unable to afford proper medical care. I went to a clinic, got a bottle of pills, and went back to the room where I lived. To put it mildly, I had the most severe diarrhea you can imagine. I was losing water at this fantastic rate, just going to the bathroom all the time. The woman who ran the rooming house was good enough to bring me water, but I ate nothing. Oh man, I was sick. I was getting weaker and weaker. On the 8th day of this misery, I seemed to float right up out of my body. So I'm looking down at my body lying in the bed still as a corpse, and I said, oh beep. I've died. I was unnerved by this. But in the next second, I thought to myself, hey, if I'm dead, who is thinking these thoughts? So then, I felt calm and very good, thinking well this sure beats being sick as a dog, this is quite okay. So I'm floating in the room, right? And it is daytime. Outside there was a church and the bells started ringing. This was normal. I had a strong urge to go check it out, so I floated out of the window. Outside it was blindingly bright. Whoa! It was so bright. In a word, it was hard to see. Don't ask see with what, because I don't have a clue, my eyes being back in my body. But I could see the church steeple, and made a circuit of it. At this point I'm feeling very exhilarated. I'm flying around free of my body. And two things really hit me at that moment. First, the body isn't me, it's just a body, and second, the whole heaven and hell thing is nonsense, we all just float off peacefully, because the spirit endures. So that was a great thing to know. At last though, some part of me got lonely for my body, and I went back inside, and sort of lay down in my body. And I slept. And the next thing I knew, the illness had broken, and I was recovering. Now because of this experience, I came to think at the time that the spirit endures, and we go off peacefully. This idea I have entertained ever since to a degree, but I rather think now that it was merely a biochemical sort of effect, not anything real in the sense of supernatural. I accept the idea it could be a hallucination of some sort, but it seemed very genuine at the time. So on the real significance of out-of-body experiences, I just don't know. But I've not feared death per se during my life, for which I am very grateful. Next NDE. I was 7 years old at the time. I was in the hospital, and was getting dehydrated, so they kept fours running into me. Back then, they had to replace needles each time they changed one. I felt worse than I can even remember now. All I remember is that I wanted all the pain to stop. I never knew how ill I was until after I grew up. I told my parents the next part, which I will explain to you. They told me that I couldn't remember, that I was too small, and not awake during most of the stay. What I remember is a feeling of leaving all that behind, and starting to float upwards. There was no ceiling that confined me. As I turned I could see everyone in the room, and my mother and aunt were crying. I saw the nurses, doctor, and my dad all talking. Everyone seemed to be going on as if something bad was happening. As I was watching this I kept floating slowly upwards. I remember feeling a great sense of relief and serenity, which, at that young age, I didn't even know the word for. I felt all that plus an extreme feeling of knowing that as long as I lived I would never know this feeling again. It was as if I could hear someone saying that all was being taken care of, but I never saw anyone. As I was watching below, I saw the nurse take my little pillow I slept with away. She said that it was ruined because of all the sweating and she would dispose of it for them. I didn't want her to throw away my pillow, so I forced myself back to get it. The next thing I remember was grabbing it while she was still close, but I also knew I wasn't hurting as I was before I left my body. That is all I can remember. Next NDE. I was coming back from my club ACT, where we helped build stage equipment for the school play. I just finished cleaning the brushes from painting a house. I walked into my school lobby and saw some of my friends. I went to go and sit with them. They said, "Hey, why don't we go and play on the ice?" So I said, "Okay, sounds like fun. I have played on the ice in front of my school before and I like sliding on it and things of that nature." I went away from those friends who wanted to play on the ice and saw some of my other friends and went over to them. I watched what they were doing. It looked like fun, and it didn't look like much could happen to me. Well, I was running at near full speed onto the ice when I slipped. I saw my feet go into the air, then I blacked out. I then was floating on top of one of those snow mounds, and I saw myself just lying there on my side with my legs crossed, but I specifically remember my legs being crossed. Then I heard a voice from very far away calling my name, asking if I was joking. Then I saw in a sort of a white color, and couldn't really see that much. I walked to the nurse with this man, who I believe was one of my vice principals, and then my mom picked me up. I went to the hospital and that was it.